Kethvar stared at the star chart floating above his desk. The blue holographic dots showed thousands of solar systems, each one carefully mapped and documented. Trade routes connected them like glowing threads. Everything looked normal until his eyes reached the outer edge of the spiral arm. There, the map simply stopped. A thick red line marked the boundary. Beyond it lay empty space on every chart he had ever seen. The words "human space" appeared in small letters next to the line, but nothing else. No stars, no planets, no trade routes. Just blank darkness. Kethvar had worked at the Galactic Cartographic Institute for 3 years. He had mapped dozens of star systems and helped create navigation, charts used across the galaxy, but he had never questioned why this one section remained empty on every map. He pulled up another chart. Same thing. The Zenthari military maps showed the same blank space. So did the Trade Guild charts and the Exploration Society maps. Every single map created by every species in the galaxy stopped at the exact same red line. Strange, Kethvar muttered to himself. His blue skin flickered with curiosity patterns as he thought about the problem. "What's strange?" asked a voice behind him. Kethvar turned to see Quindal approaching his workstation. The old Velthari supervisor moved slowly on his 6 legs, his ancient shell covered in the wisdom marks of his species. Quindal had been mapping stars longer than most species had known about space travel. "The human boundary," Kethvar said, pointing at the red line. "Why don't we have any maps of their territory? Surely someone has explored that region." Quindal stopped walking. His large eyes focused on the chart, then on Kethvar. For a long moment he said nothing. "We have work to do," Quindal finally said. "The Orion sector needs new trade route calculations. But Supervisor, I'm curious about—" "Drop it." Quindal's voice carried a warning tone that made Kethvar's skin flash orange with alarm. "Some things are better left unmapped." The old Velthari walked away without another word, leaving Kethvar more confused than before. In all his time working here, he had never seen Quindal refuse to discuss a mapping problem. Meanwhile, millions of light years away, Captain Jake Morrison sat in the command chair of the human exploration vessel, Wanderer. The bridge around him hummed with quiet activity as his crew monitored the edge of human space. "Contact on sensors," reported Lieutenant Lisa Carter from her station. "Small ship drifting. Looks like they're in trouble." Jake leaned forward. "Can you identify them?" "Zenthari research vessel," Lisa said, checking her readings. "Their engines are dead. They're about 2 light hours inside our boundary." Jake nodded. "Standard procedure. Take us to them." The Wanderer moved smoothly through space toward the stranded ship. As they approached, Jake could see the vessel clearly on the main screen. It was small and looked fragile compared to human ships, with delicate sensor arrays and thin hull plating. "They're alive," Lisa reported, picking up life signs. 4 crew members. "Open a channel," Jake ordered. The main screen flickered, showing the bridge of the Zenthari ship. 4 aliens with blue skin and large eyes looked back at them. The captain, identified by his darker blue coloring, spoke first. "This is Research Captain Velen of the Zenthari vessel Starseeker. We have suffered engine failure and require assistance." Jake smiled in what he hoped was a friendly way. "This is Captain Morrison of the human ship Wanderer. We're here to help. What do you need?" Velen's eyes widened slightly at the word human, but he maintained his composure. "Our power core has failed. We need replacement parts and fuel." "No problem," Jake said easily. "We'll transfer what you need. Lisa, prepare a care package. Food, water, medical supplies, and spare parts for Zenthari engines." "Right away, sir," Lisa responded. Over the next few hours, the human crew worked efficiently to help the stranded aliens. They transferred supplies, repaired the damaged systems, and even provided detailed star charts to help the Zenthari find their way home. Captain Velen watched the humans work with growing unease. They were polite, helpful, and skilled. Their ship was clearly powerful, with thick armor and weapon systems that could destroy his vessel without effort. Yet they showed no aggression or threat. "Your crew is very efficient," Velen commented to Jake as they watched the repair work. "We try to help when we can," Jake replied. Space is dangerous enough without leaving people stranded. Something in the way he said it made Velen's skin ripple with nervous patterns. The human captain spoke about danger so casually, as if it was just another part of daily life. When the repairs were finished, Jake personally escorted the Zenthari ship back to the boundary. "Safe travels," he said over the radio. "Try to stay on your side of the line. It's better for everyone that way." The Zenthari ship crossed back into neutral space, and Jake watched them go. He had no idea that his simple act of kindness had left the alien crew deeply disturbed. Back on the Starseeker, Captain Velen sat in his command chair, thinking about the encounter. The humans had been perfectly polite and helpful. They had fixed his ship and sent him home safely. So why did he feel so unsettled? Maybe it was the way they had worked so efficiently with dangerous equipment. Maybe it was how their ship looked, like it was built for war, even though they used it for exploration. Or maybe it was something else entirely, something he couldn't quite identify. He made a note in his log. "Encountered humans at boundary. Received assistance. Recommend avoiding human space in future missions." When his crew asked why, he found he couldn't explain it properly. He just knew, deep in his bones, that some boundaries existed for very good reasons. Back at the Galactic Cartographic Institute, Kethvar continued to stare at the blank space beyond the red line, unaware that his supervisor Quindal was watching him from across the room with worried eyes. Kethvar could not stop thinking about the empty space on the maps. For 3 days he tried to focus on his regular work, but his mind kept returning to the red line and the mystery beyond it. During his break periods, he searched through the Institute's historical records. What he found made the puzzle even stranger. The blank space had not always existed. Maps from 220 years ago showed star systems in that region. There were planets, trade routes, and exploration notes. But exactly 200 years ago, something changed. Every map created after that date showed the same empty void. Kethvar dug deeper into the archives. He found mission reports from various species describing successful mapping expeditions to human space. Then, suddenly, all such missions stopped. The reports ended mid-sentence as if someone had simply decided to stop exploring that region entirely. He needed answers, but asking Quindal again seemed like a bad idea. Instead, he decided to contact someone who might actually talk to him about humans. The Kepler Station database listed Dr. Elena Rodriguez as a human xenoanthropologist working at the Neutral Research Facility. Kethvar sent her a message, explaining that he was a cartographer interested in learning about human culture for his work. To his surprise, she replied within hours. "Hello, Kethvar. I'd be happy to talk about human culture. It's always nice to meet curious beings from other species. When would you like to chat?" They arranged a video call for the next day. When Elena's face appeared on his screen, Kethvar was struck by how normal she looked. Humans were similar to many species he knew. 2 eyes, 1 mouth, hair on their heads. She smiled warmly and seemed genuinely happy to meet him. "So you're interested in human culture?" Elena said. "What would you like to know?" "Well," Kethvar began carefully, "I'm curious about your daily life. What do humans do for food and entertainment?" Elena's smile grew wider. "Oh, we eat all sorts of things. Fruits, vegetables, grains, and meat, of course. We raise animals specifically for food. Cattle, pigs, chickens. We also hunt wild animals sometimes, though that's more for sport these days." Kethvar's skin went pale blue. His species, like most in the galaxy, had evolved from plant-eating ancestors. The idea of deliberately killing other living creatures for food was horrifying. "You kill animals to eat them?" "Of course," Elena said, looking puzzled by his reaction. "We're omnivores. We need protein. Don't your people eat meat?" "No," Kethvar whispered. "We grow our food from plants and minerals." Elena nodded, as if this was perfectly normal. "Different species, different diets. Anyway, for entertainment, we have lots of options. Sports are very popular. Football, boxing, racing. We also enjoy movies and books about adventure and conflict. War stories are especially popular." "War stories?" Kethvar's voice cracked. Sure, humans love stories about overcoming challenges through fighting. We have thousands of movies about battles, soldiers, and heroes who save the day through violence. It's very exciting entertainment. Kethavar stared at her smiling face, unable to process what he was hearing. This friendly, helpful human was casually describing activities that would be considered deeply disturbing by every civilized species in the galaxy. Is something wrong? Elena asked, noticing his silence. No, I'm just interested in learning more, Kethavar managed to say. Tell me about human history. Elena's eyes lit up. Oh, human history is fascinating. We've been fighting wars for our entire recorded history. Thousands of years of battles, conquests, and conflicts. We've gotten very good at it. Even our peace treaties are usually just breaks between wars while everyone prepares for the next fight. She continued talking, enthusiastically about famous battles, military leaders, and weapons development throughout human history. With each word, Kethavar felt more horrified. This species had spent their entire existence perfecting the art of killing each other, and they were proud of it. We've only had real peace for about 50 years, Elena concluded. Ever since we met other species and realized we needed to work together, though we still have military exercises and competitions to keep our skills sharp. After the call ended, Kethavar sat in stunned silence. Elena had been perfectly pleasant and helpful. She clearly meant no harm and was genuinely interested in sharing her culture. But everything she described sounded like the behavior of the most violent species imaginable. Meanwhile, at the Galactic Council headquarters, Commander Ryan Phillips was attending a routine diplomatic meeting. The large circular chamber held representatives from dozens of species, all discussing trade, agreements, and territorial boundaries. Ryan sat with his cultural liaison, Amy Walsh, at the human delegation table. They were reviewing notes for their presentation when a young Orion delegate approached them. Excuse me, the Orion said politely. I'm new to the council, and I'm trying to understand the territorial arrangements. Could you tell me about human population centers? How many worlds do you control? The chamber fell silent. Every conversation stopped. All eyes turned to the human table. Ryan smiled calmly. That's classified information for security reasons, but thank you for your interest in human affairs. I don't understand, the young Orion continued innocently. Every other species shares basic population data. It helps with trade planning and resource allocation. An older Orion quickly moved to the young delegate's side. Please excuse my colleague, he said quickly. He's still learning proper protocols. The older Orion pulled the younger one away, whispering urgently. Ryan could hear fragments of the conversation. Never ask about human numbers, dangerous to know. Stick to approved topics. Amy leaned over to Ryan. Poor kid has no idea, does he? None of them do when they first arrive, Ryan replied quietly. The experienced delegates will teach him the unwritten rules soon enough. The meeting resumed, but Ryan noticed how carefully the other delegates phrased their questions. They asked about human trade goods, cultural exchanges, and diplomatic positions. But no one asked about population, military strength, or territorial expansion. Those topics were somehow off-limits, though no official rule existed. After the meeting, Ryan and Amy walked through the station corridors. They passed groups of alien delegates who nodded politely but kept their distance. Conversations stopped when humans approached and resumed after they passed. Sometimes I feel like we're walking through a minefield, Amy commented. In a way we are, Ryan said. We just can't see the mines. Back on his homeworld, Kethavar stared at his star charts with new eyes. The blank space beyond the red line no longer seemed mysterious. It seemed necessary. If Elena was a typical example of human culture, then perhaps there were very good reasons why the galaxy had decided to stop mapping their territory. He thought about her casual mentions of killing for food, entertainment, based on violence and a history built on warfare. She had seemed so normal, so friendly. That somehow made it worse. For the first time, Kethavar began to understand why Quindel had warned him to drop his questions. Some knowledge was too disturbing to be useful. Some boundaries existed to protect everyone involved. But his curiosity was far from satisfied. If anything, he needed to know more. Kethavar spent 2 weeks trying to access the restricted archives. His position at the Cartographic Institute gave him some clearance, but the files he wanted were locked behind security barriers he had never seen before. Finally, he found a way in through old backup systems that had been forgotten over the decades. What he discovered made his blood run cold. The files were marked Final Expedition Reports, Human Territory Survey, Classification Level Maximum. The dates showed they were nearly 180 years old. The expedition leader was Admiral Zexon of the Altarian Fleet, one of the most respected explorers in galactic history. The first reports seemed normal. Admiral Zexon described approaching human space with a scientific fleet of 12 ships and 300 crew members from various species. Their mission was to map human territory and establish formal diplomatic contact. Then the reports began to change. Day 15. We have observed human ships at the boundary. They are built like weapons, even the civilian vessels. Heavy armor, multiple. Gun ports and engines powerful enough to ram through asteroids. When we asked about this, they explained that space is dangerous and they need to be prepared. They seemed confused by our question. Day 23. Humans invited us to observe their recreational activities. We watched something called racing, where they pilot vehicles at lethal speeds around a track. Many vehicles crashed and exploded during the event. The humans cheered loudly at each crash. When we expressed concern for the drivers, they laughed and said crashes were part of the fun. Several drivers survived impacts that should have killed them and immediately wanted to race again. Kethavar's hands shook as he read. The humans had invited alien observers to watch them nearly kill themselves for entertainment. Day 31. We attended a human sporting event called boxing. 2 humans entered a ring and began hitting each other with their fists until one could no longer stand. Thousands of other humans watched and cheered for more violence. The winner was covered in blood and seemed proud of his injuries. When asked why they enjoyed watching others get hurt, they said, "It showed skill and courage." We had to remove 3 crew members who fainted during the event. The reports continued for months, each one more disturbing than the last. Admiral Zexon described human cities where civilians carried weapons as a normal part of daily life. He wrote about human children playing games that involved mock combat and competitive fighting. He recorded conversations with humans who spoke casually about their wars as if discussing the weather. Day 89. We have reached Earth, the human homeworld. I am not sure how to describe what we see. The entire planet appears to be one massive fortress. Every city is built with defensive walls, escape tunnels, and weapons installations. When we asked about this, they explained that their cities were designed to survive natural disasters and enemy attacks. They spoke as if attacks on civilian population centers were a normal part of life. Day 94. Human architecture is designed around the assumption of violence. Their homes have reinforced doors, barred windows, and alarm systems. They keep dangerous animals as pets, creatures with sharp teeth and claws that could easily kill a human child. Yet they allow these dogs and cats to live in their homes and play with their young. When we expressed shock, they petted the animals affectionately and said they were loyal companions. Kethavar had to stop reading. The idea of living with predatory animals as family members was beyond his understanding. His own species lived in harmony with gentle herbivores. The thought of sharing a home with creatures designed to kill was terrifying. But the reports continued for several more months. Day 156. We observed human food preparation. They consume the flesh of multiple animal species daily. They have developed hundreds of ways to cook dead animals, and they seem to enjoy the process. They invited us to a barbecue where they cooked meat over open flames while consuming fermented plant substances that affected their behavior. Several humans became intoxicated and began challenging each other to fighting contests. This was considered normal social interaction. Day 203. Human. Transportation systems operate at speeds that would be considered suicidal by any other species. Their vehicles regularly travel at velocities that result in fatal crashes, yet they consider this acceptable risk for the convenience of faster travel. Deaths from transportation accidents number in the tens of thousands annually on Earth alone. When we suggested safer alternatives, they said speed was more important than safety. Life's too short to drive slow, one human told us. The final entries were the most disturbing of all. Day 267. We have concluded our survey of human space. I must report that humans are not hostile toward other species. They are genuinely kind, helpful, and interested in peaceful cooperation. This makes our findings even more troubling. Everything we have observed represents normal, everyday human behavior. They do not consider themselves violent or dangerous. They view their lifestyle as perfectly reasonable and cannot understand why other species find it disturbing. Day 275. Final recommendation: human space should be designated as off-limits to further exploration, not because humans are a threat to other species, but because other species cannot psychologically survive extended exposure to human normalcy. 3 of my crew members have requested permanent psychological treatment after this mission. 2 others have asked to retire from space service entirely. I myself will need extensive therapy to process what we have witnessed. Day 280. Last entry. The humans have been wonderfully hospitable throughout our visit. They have shared their food, their culture, and their friendship freely. They genuinely want to help other species and cannot understand why we seem frightened of them. This makes them more terrifying than any enemy we have ever encountered. I recommend that all future contact with humans be limited to neutral territory and brief diplomatic meetings. No one should be subjected to prolonged exposure to their way of life. The file ended there. Kethvar sat in the darkness of his office, staring at the screen. Admiral Zekson and his crew had returned home and immediately classified their findings at the highest security level. Within 10 years, the Galactic Council had quietly agreed to stop all mapping expeditions into human territory. Meanwhile, on the research station New Horizon, Dr. Sam Turner and Dr. Kate Henderson were working with a team of alien archaeologists to study ancient ruins on a dead planet. The dig site was dangerous, with unstable ground and toxic gases seeping from underground chambers. "How do we get through this rock wall?" asked Dr. Yixtal, a Manthari archaeologist. "It's blocking access to the main burial chamber." Sam examined the wall with his scanner. "Simple. We'll use shaped charges to blow a hole through it. Should take about 50 pounds of explosives." The alien team members stepped backward in alarm. "Explosives?" Yixtal's voice rose to a high pitch. "Near priceless archaeological artifacts?" "Don't worry," Sam said cheerfully. "I've done this hundreds of times. We'll use a controlled blast to remove just the right amount of rock without damaging anything important." Kate looked up from her biological samples. "Sam's really good at controlled demolitions. Last year, he opened a sealed tomb on Mars by dropping a small nuclear device down a ventilation shaft." "Nuclear device?" whispered Dr. Zenka, another alien team member. "Just a tiny one," Kate assured them. "Barely registered on the radiation detectors afterward." The alien archaeologists looked at each other with growing horror. These humans spoke about using weapons of mass destruction as if they were common tools. "Maybe we could try a different approach," Yixtal suggested weakly. "Something less explosive?" Sam and Kate exchanged puzzled looks. "Like what?" Sam asked. "This is the fastest and safest way to get through the wall." "Safest?" Zenka's voice cracked. "Sure," Kate said. "Trying to chip through by hand would take months and might cause a cave-in. This way will be done in an hour with minimal risk." No. Aliens realized that humans and the rest of the galaxy had very different definitions of words like safe, minimal risk, and simple solutions. That night, as Kethvar finally closed the classified files, he understood why the galactic maps stopped at the red line. It wasn't about politics or territory or military threats. It was about survival, psychological survival. Humans weren't evil or malicious. They were just so fundamentally different that prolonged contact with them could break the minds of other species. They lived in a reality where violence, danger, and death were such normal parts of life that they couldn't imagine why other beings found these things disturbing. The galaxy had collectively decided to pretend human space didn't exist, because the alternative was too terrible to contemplate. Some neighbors were better appreciated from a very safe distance. HFY found more files hidden deep in the archive system. These documents were even more classified than Admiral Zexon's reports. They contained the secret discussions of the Galactic Council from 150 years ago, when the leaders of all major species met to decide what to do about the human problem. The meeting transcripts made everything clear. Council leader Threxan of the Galactic Assembly had opened the session with a simple statement. "We are here to discuss species designation 7742H, commonly known as humans. The question before us is whether they represent a threat to galactic civilization." Representatives from 43 different species had attended that meeting. Each one had the same conclusion. Humans were not hostile, but they were impossible to integrate into normal galactic society. They offered to share their military training methods, reported General Kixvar of the Centaurian Defense Force. "I observed one session. They call it basic training. The recruits were forced to crawl through mud while live ammunition was fired over their heads. Then they had to fight each other with weapons designed to cause pain, but not permanent injury. The humans who ran, the training said this was easy stuff, and that real training would come later. Half my observation team required medical treatment for stress-related illness. Their civilian education is equally disturbing," added Dr. Velmon, the Altarian Minister of Cultural Affairs. "Human children are taught about their history starting from age 5. They learn about wars, battles, and conflicts as normal parts of their past. By age 10, most human children can name dozens of different weapons and describe multiple ways to kill an enemy. They consider this basic knowledge that every educated person should have." The transcripts showed that every species had similar stories. The humans were always helpful, always friendly, always willing to share their knowledge and culture. But their knowledge and culture were based on assumptions that no other species could accept. "They invited us to observe their Space Force exercises," reported Admiral Quindal, HFY's own supervisor from many years ago. "What they call training exercises involved flying through asteroid fields at maximum speed while shooting at moving targets. Several human ships collided with asteroids during the exercise. The pilots who survived the crashes were congratulated for their aggressive flying and given medals for bravery. When we asked about the pilots who died, they said those deaths were acceptable losses and part of the learning process." The most chilling part of the transcripts was the humans' own testimony. Ambassador Patricia Williams had been invited to address the council and explain human culture. "We don't understand why you find us disturbing," she had said honestly. "We've always been willing to help other species. We've shared our technology, our knowledge, and our friendship. We've never attacked anyone who didn't attack us first. We follow all the galactic treaties and respect other species' territories. What more do you want from us?" When asked about human military capabilities, Ambassador Williams had been completely open. "We have about 50 billion people spread across 200 worlds," she had explained. "Each world has defensive systems capable of destroying incoming fleets. Our civilian ships carry enough firepower to level cities, but that's just for protection, against pirates and natural hazards. Our actual military ships are much more heavily armed. We have weapons that can destroy stars if necessary, but we've never used them against other species. We're peaceful people." The council members had sat in stunned silence. 50 billion humans, each one raised in a culture of violence and warfare, with weapons capable of destroying stars, and they considered themselves peaceful. "We solve problems through negotiation whenever possible," Ambassador Williams had continued. "But if negotiation fails, we're prepared to use other methods. That's just common sense. You can't maintain peace without being ready for war." After the human ambassador left, the council had debated for 3 days. The final decision was unanimous. Humans would be allowed to expand freely in their section of the galaxy, but other species would avoid that region entirely. It was the only way to maintain galactic peace and the mental health of other species. Tium. Official records showed that no formal treaty was signed. Instead, the agreement was implemented quietly through cultural pressure. Mapmakers were encouraged to leave human space blank. Trade guilds were told that human territory was economically unviable. Explorer societies were advised that the region held no scientific interest. Within 50 years, the entire galaxy had learned to pretend that human space simply didn't exist. Meanwhile, on the Joint Military Training Station Unity Base, Colonel Beth Martinez was running exercises with alien military units. The training was designed to help different species learn to work together in emergency situations. Today we'll practice basic combat scenarios, Beth announced to the mixed group of human and alien soldiers. We'll start with something simple, urban warfare in a damaged city environment. The alien soldiers looked nervous. Commander Yextal of the Rigel Defense Corps raised one of his forearms. What do you mean by basic combat scenarios? Standard stuff, Beth said cheerfully. Room-to-room fighting, explosive booby traps, sniper fire from unknown positions, civilian hostage situations. We'll use training ammunition so nobody will actually die. Nobody will actually die? Whispered Lieutenant Kexfor of the Vegan Space Marines. Right, Beth confirmed. The training rounds will just hurt a lot when they hit you. Helps you learn to take cover properly. We'll also use simulated explosions that will knock you down but won't cause permanent damage. She led them to the training area, which looked like a destroyed city. Buildings were damaged, smoke filled the air, and the sound of gunfire echoed from hidden speakers. Your mission is to advance through the city while enemy forces try to stop you, Beth explained. Use whatever tactics you think will work. Remember, in real combat, the enemy is trying to kill you, so don't take unnecessary risks. The human soldiers spread out and began moving through the ruins with practiced efficiency. They communicated through hand signals, used explosives to create new paths through buildings, and engaged simulated enemies with deadly precision. The alien soldiers tried to follow but were overwhelmed by the intensity of the training. Within minutes, most of them were hiding behind cover, too frightened to move forward. This is impossible, gasped Commander Yextal as simulated bullets whined over his head. How do you function in this environment? Practice, Beth replied, casually throwing a training grenade around a corner. We start this kind of training when we're teenagers. By the time we join the military, urban combat feels natural. Natural? Yextal stared at her in horror. Sure, Beth said. Cities are just big battlefields with more places to hide. You learn to read the terrain, identify threats, and eliminate problems quickly. It's like a puzzle, but with explosions. That night, Commander Yextal sent an urgent message to Rigel High Command. Request immediate withdrawal from Joint Training Program. Human combat methods are incompatible with our forces. Recommend limiting future military cooperation to strictly, defensive scenarios in neutral space. Similar messages were sent by every alien commander who participated in the exercise. Within a month, the Joint Training Program was quietly canceled. Back on his homeworld, Kethvar continued reading through the classified files. He found economic reports showing that human space contained some of the richest mineral deposits and most habitable planets in the galaxy. Trade with humans could have made every species wealthy beyond imagination, but the psychological cost was too high. The few trade missions that had been attempted resulted in alien crews requiring extensive mental health treatment after exposure to human, normal business practices. One report described a human merchant who casually mentioned that his cargo ship was armed with enough weapons to glass a small moon because pirates were common in his region. He had seemed genuinely confused when the alien traders became hysterical with fear. Another report told of human industrialists who offered to clear dangerous asteroids from mining areas by using controlled nuclear explosions. They couldn't understand why this generous offer terrified their potential business partners. The pattern was always the same. Humans would make reasonable offers using methods that seemed perfectly logical to them, but absolutely insane to everyone else. They would then be confused and hurt when other species refused their help. As Kethvar closed the final classified file, he understood the complete truth. The galaxy had not rejected humans, because they were evil or threatening. The galaxy had rejected humans because they were incomprehensibly alien in ways that made peaceful coexistence impossible. Humans lived in a reality where violence was normal, danger was expected, and death was just another problem to be solved. Other species lived in realities where violence was rare, danger was avoided, and death was the ultimate tragedy. The two worldviews could not be reconciled. So the galaxy had chosen the only solution that allowed both sides to survive: separation through willful ignorance. The red line on every map wasn't a border. It was a psychological barrier that protected the sanity of every non-human species in the galaxy. Kethavar spent 3 sleepless nights thinking about everything he had learned. The knowledge felt like a heavy weight in his mind. He understood now why Quindal had warned him, why the maps stopped at the red line, and why the galaxy had collectively decided to pretend that human space didn't exist, but understanding didn't make the burden easier to carry. He tried to return to his normal work, but every time he looked at a star chart, his eyes went to that blank space. Now he knew what was hidden there: 50 billion humans living on 200 worlds, each one capable of destroying anyone who threatened them, each one genuinely confused about why other species found them frightening. The worst part was that they weren't monsters. They were just different in ways that no other species could mentally handle. A week after reading the final classified files, Kethavar received an invitation that made his blood freeze. The annual Galactic Cultural Exchange was being held on Kepler Station, and humans would be attending. As a senior cartographer, he was invited to represent the mapping community. He almost declined, but curiosity won over fear. He needed to see for himself. Kepler Station buzzed with activity when Kethavar arrived. Representatives from dozens of species filled the corridors, attending lectures, demonstrations, and cultural exhibitions. The human delegation had set up displays showing their art, music, and technology. Kethavar approached the human section nervously. A sign above their area read, "Human Cultural Exhibition. Welcome all species," with translations in 40 different languages. The first person he met was Admiral Jack Stevens, a tall human with gray hair and kind eyes. Jack wore a dress uniform covered in medals and insignia that Kethavar now realized probably represented victories in battles that would have traumatized entire alien civilizations. "Welcome," Jack said with a warm smile. "I'm Jack Stevens. Are you interested in learning about human culture?" "Yes," Kethavar managed to say. "I'm Kethavar, a cartographer from the Zenthari Institute." "A map maker. How interesting," Jack's eyes lit up. "You know, we humans love exploring and mapping new territories. Some of our greatest heroes were explorers who went into unknown regions despite terrible dangers." "What kind of dangers?" Kethavar asked, though he was afraid of the answer. "Oh, the usual stuff," Jack said casually. "Radiation storms, hostile wildlife, unstable geology, deadly weather patterns. Lewis and Clark explored our western continent when it was full of dangerous animals and hostile tribes. They nearly died dozens of times, but they kept going because the unknown was so exciting." Kethavar's skin flickered with nervous patterns. Humans found deadly danger exciting. "Here, let me introduce you to Commander Sarah Blake," Jack said, leading him to a woman examining geological samples. "Sarah's one of our planetary surveyors. She specializes in hostile environment exploration." Sarah looked up from her samples and smiled. "Nice to meet you, Kethavar. Jack, were you telling him about our exploration history?" "Just getting started," Jack replied. "Maybe you could tell him about your work." "I'd love to," Sarah said enthusiastically. "I survey planets for potential colonization. Mostly I work on worlds that other species consider uninhabitable. High radiation, extreme weather, dangerous native life forms. Last month I spent 3 weeks on a planet where the rain was sulfuric acid and the native plants tried to eat anything that moved." "That sounds terrifying," Kethavar whispered. "It was challenging," Sarah agreed. "But that's what makes it fun. Anyone can survey a safe, boring planet. The dangerous ones are where you really test your skills." She pulled up holographic images of her recent surveys. This is New Arizona. Surface temperature reaches 200 degrees Celsius during the day and drops to minus 100 at night. The atmosphere is mostly carbon dioxide with traces of poison gas. We're planning to build a city there next year. A city? On that planet? Kethvar stared at the hellish landscape on the display. Sure, Sarah said. We'll use underground construction with sealed environmental systems. The extreme conditions will make it a great place to test new survival technologies. Plus, the mineral deposits are amazing. The dangerous environment means no other species wants it, so we can have the whole planet to ourselves. Kethvar realized she was describing a world that would kill most species within minutes, and humans were planning to turn it into a vacation destination. Would you like to see our new colony ships? Jack asked. We just finished building a fleet designed for deep space exploration. Before Kethvar could decline, they led him to a viewing port where human ships were docked. The vessels were massive, heavily armored and bristling with weapon systems. Beautiful, aren't they? Sarah said admiringly. Each ship can carry 10,000 colonists, plus all their equipment. The armor can withstand direct hits from asteroids, and the weapon systems can clear hostile space debris or defend against pirates. You arm your civilian ships? Kethvar asked. Weakly. Of course, Jack said, looking puzzled. Space is dangerous. You never know what you might encounter out there. These ships are designed to handle anything from solar flares to hostile alien encounters. Hostile aliens? Kethvar's voice cracked. We haven't met any yet, Sarah assured him. But it's better to be prepared. Each ship carries enough firepower to sterilize a planet's surface if necessary. Just for emergencies, you understand. Kethvar nodded numbly. Humans carried planet-killing weapons on their passenger ships, just for emergencies. The really exciting part is where we're planning to go, Jack continued. We've identified several star systems in the galactic core region that look promising for colonization. High radiation, unstable stellar phenomena, space-time distortions, perfect for testing, human adaptability. You want to colonize the galactic core? Kethvar stared at them in horror. The galactic core was considered the most dangerous region of space, avoided by every civilized species. Why not? Sarah asked. The challenges would be incredible, but that's what makes exploration worthwhile. Besides, if we can survive there, we can survive anywhere. They continued talking enthusiastically about their plans to colonize impossible worlds, explore deadly regions of space, and overcome challenges that would destroy any other species. They spoke about these plans the way other species might discuss a pleasant picnic. Finally, Jack asked the question that Kethvar had been dreading. So, Kethvar, would you like to visit Earth sometime? We'd love to show you around our homeworld. That's very kind, Kethvar managed to say, but I'm quite busy with my mapping work. I understand, Sarah said, but if you ever change your mind, you're always welcome. We have some beautiful impact craters from ancient asteroid strikes, and our volcano national parks are amazing. You can watch molten lava flows from just a few hundred meters away. We also have some great radiation viewing sites, Jack added helpfully. When solar storms hit our magnetosphere, the light shows are spectacular. The radiation levels get a bit high, but we have protective suits that let you experience it safely. Kethvar realized they were inviting him to visit a world where tourists went to watch volcanic eruptions and radiation storms for entertainment. I should get back to my delegation, he said quickly. Of course, Jack said warmly. It was wonderful meeting you. Here's my contact information if you ever want to chat about exploration or mapping. As Kethvar walked away, he heard Sarah say to Jack, Nice guy. Very curious about our culture. I hope he decides to visit Earth someday. I think he was a bit nervous, Jack replied. Maybe we came on too strong. We should have started with something simple, like our extreme sports or combat training programs. Kethvar fled back to his quarters and immediately began packing his belongings. He needed to get back to his homeworld as quickly as possible. On the shuttle ride home, he thought about Jack and Sarah. They had been genuinely kind, friendly, and welcoming. They clearly wanted to share their culture and make friends with other species. They had no idea that their casual descriptions of planet-killing weapons and vacation trips to deadly worlds had terrified him. That was what made them so frightening. They weren't evil or malicious. They were just living their normal lives in ways that no other species could comprehend. When Kethavar returned to the Cartographic Institute, he found Quindal waiting for him. "So," the old supervisor said quietly, "you met them?" "Yes," Kethavar replied. "And now you understand?" "Yes." Quindal nodded slowly. "What will you do with this knowledge?" Kethavar looked at his workstation, where star charts waited to be completed. He walked over and pulled up the familiar map showing the galaxy with its blank space marked by the red line. "I'll do my job," he said simply. "I'll map what can be safely mapped." He opened his desk drawer and pulled out a small data crystal, containing all the classified files he had copied. Without hesitation, he deleted every file and destroyed the crystal. "Some knowledge is too dangerous to keep," he said. From that day forward, whenever new cartographers asked about the empty space on the maps, Kethavar gave them the same answer Quindal had given him. "We map what we can survive knowing about. Some neighbors are better appreciated from a distance." The red line remained on every map, and the galaxy continued to pretend that the space beyond it was empty. It was better that way. In human space, Admiral Jack Stevens and Commander Sarah Blake continued their work, completely unaware that their friendly conversation with